for this session, it's a very special session, a fireside chat with Dr. Fineberg and Dr. Huang. And in this session, we mostly want to get their perspective and views on things as they have practiced medicine and public health for 50 years or so. And a lot of our students here really want to get that perspective. And so I will start with a simple prompt, and feel free to share with everybody your views. And then we do have 4 items that we would like to go through in the next 45 minutes. So the first question is, could you give a brief historic context for the evolution of medicine and public health in both the US and in Asia in the last century? And as you first started your practice of medicine, and has that evolved, and how has that evolved?
Well, I'd be happy to begin, but I always remember one lesson that my father taught me. And he said, you will very seldom learn anything while you are talking. And I like to remember that. It was one of 3 things he taught regularly to me. I might as well say the other 2 now, yes? So he said, you will very seldom learn anything while you are talking. He said, never break your arm patting yourself on the back. Very good advice. And his 3rd piece of advice was, it will not cost you any more to be nice. So those ideas have stayed with me, but I'm talking, I'm not learning. 50 years, one thing I will tell all of our young students, 50 years will go by much faster than you can imagine. It does give you an opportunity to reflect, though, and to think back. And I would say for medicine and public health, there's a lot of continuity, but also a tremendous amount that is different. In medicine, the overwhelming developing capacity to do more and more for our patients is, to me, the incredible change of 50 years ago. Patients for whom we really could do practically nothing now are curable. Cancer is the prime example, really. Patients we used to keep in a hospital when I was in training for 2 to 3 weeks now are admitted not at all or for a day. Drugs and interventions that didn't exist are everyday use. Vaccines that prevent disease. When I was a child, I was in the first test group for polio immunization in the 1950s. And what a difference we have for today, and the experience in COVID of creating a novel vaccine in the space of less than a year. So the capacity to do more good is so dramatic for me. I will say a word of public health, since you know public health was such an important part of my own background and choice. When I was a student, at least in medicine, public health was not considered a very admirable choice. It was, I always used to think, well, there were 3 Ps that medicine looked down on: psychiatry, pediatrics, and public health. And I actually liked all three of them. But the world has changed. And my own personal theory is that one of the reasons public health has become as popular, which it is with our students, is begins with Bill Gates and his foundation. Because he demonstrated that at the time the world's wealthiest man could say, this is important enough that I'm devoting the rest of my life and a big part of my fortune to treating everyone in the world as if their life matters. That made a huge impression. And I think that the capacity for public health now to do more for millions at a time is really the most dramatic change for me in observing the field over the course of my career. It's now kind of a mark of pride for students to declare their interest early for public health as well as medicine. And in the old days, it was, if not exactly frowned on, it was considered odd that you would make such a choice. So that's a very big change for our students, I think, today. In the United States, when I was a dean of public health, there were 23 schools. Now there are 3 times that many, and many more training programs. Public health as a mainstream endeavor academically and in professional practice, that transformation for me has been dramatic. So those are 2 things, the amount you can do in medicine and the prominence of public health.
So there's a model here for me to follow. You spoke of your father, and I'm speaking of my mentor at Duke. This was back in 1967. So he said that medicine is always personal. And it's the way you help an individual actually counts. So he's very focused on every single patient. And I learned from him that he knew almost everything about that individual. Family, financial situation, the education background, distance from home and so he knew everything so well. I went down from Philadelphia, so all I knew was the greater Philadelphia area, which is basically small, because at Duke, you deal with patients from West Virginia, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, and even from abroad, because his fame was everywhere. So basically, whoever he took care of, we had to follow. And so he knew everything, and including patients from other countries. So remarkable person. And so I learned from him that I needed to know every single patient as detailed as possible. And I still do that. So I'm father from public health, but it is important that when you try to understand an individual, not only you understand that individual, but the environment surrounding And so at Duke, you are requested to be flown everywhere to have a dinner with practitioners out in the rural area. And you have to give a talk. And most people were not interested in my talk. They were interested in where I came from. Of course, they knew that I looked different. And after knowing about my origin, my birth, place of birth, I asked me where I was from. And I mentioned to them that so-and-so was my mentor. And they never asked me they never questioned me about how incompetent or competent I was. So it's important to work with the right mentor, because you can go anywhere with his blessing.
Could I ask the name of that mentor that you just spoke about?
His name was Ralph Wayne Rundles. And he used to tell patients, Rundles like Buttles, because it's an unusual name. And he was brought up in the rural area of Indiana. Went to DePaul. You probably know DePaul. A small college. And then he went to Cornell and had his PhD in neuroanatomy and physiology. Before he was recruited to go to Duke as the first class to Duke, 1939. And he did so well that he was brought back to residency from Michigan. In those days, Michigan was the place with, EKG, the triangle, all this, the best residency was at University of Michigan. So he went there for training and then was recruited back to Duke and remained at Duke until his death. And the reason why I got interested in him was because when I was in Philadelphia Children's Hospital, we were giving toxic substances to acute leukemia patients. And because uric acid would go way up, and so we would be prescribing allopurinol. And then I found out that allopurinol's original work was done by Wayne Rundles. So I decided that I was going to do my fellowship training with him, which I have no regrets. I learned a great deal from him. Not only that he was a great physician, a great initiator of chemotherapy, but a very fine. So a physician's combination ought to be all that. Professionally outstanding, and as a human being, is someone that we all enjoy being associated.
Talk about key values over the last 50 years. Key values that you believe medical training should cultivate. Has that changed over time? What were the key values when you started, and what do you believe are the key values now? And are there additional key values that you will add?
Not money, not wealth. I would say, and I learned from my parents. Interestingly, I'm always learning from someone, not actually something that I invented. My father worked for his father-in-law for 10 years because his father couldn't speak anything but Taiwanese. So he was able to speak Japanese, Mandarin, and pretty good English. So that was a role model. And the other thing that was more important to me was his sharing. He was always not shy in sharing what he knew or what he owned with someone else. And my mother's the same. And so when I was in the last year of high school at Jianguo Middle School, I had to fill out the application for college. And so my father asked me what I wanted to be. I said, I would like to be a writer. So he said, can you write as well as Lin Yutang, who used to be very well known, belonged to his generation. And I said, well, there's no way, because I have not written anything. This is high school. So we're studying Generalissimo, Chiang Kai-shek. We're always memorizing his speeches. So I said I didn't know. And so he said, no, if you don't know, if you're not sure about yourself, do something else. So he wanted me to study engineering because he went to Japan and his classmates were, at that time, heads of Mitsubishi industry. So he wanted me to go to engineering and study with, and then later study with them, and then come back to Taiwan to start Taiwan's business in Taiwan. And I said, I'm not interested. Disappointed. He didn't force me to accept his direction. And I thought of our family doctor, who was really kind, but a Japanese medical school graduate, and always very attentive, very compassionate, very nice. He came to our area with my father's help. My father helping him to establish his practice. Because his elder brother was killed during incident 228, which is just a few days before. Right? And my father was very fond of his brother, a lawyer. So he decided he would take care of the younger brother. And so brought him to our area to practice. And gave him a lot of things. And he was very nice to us. When I was sick, his help was really a major force of recovery. So I said, I want to doctor. My mother immediately raised her hand and said, definitely. Then you can take care of a patient without asking for money. That was the reason why she suggested, and I accepted right away. Because to go into engineering wasn't my choice. And my father wasn't approved of approving of me for going into literature, to writing. So medicine was a pretty good compromise. So this is why I'm still doing this. I'm 60 years out now, being a doctor. I have no regrets.
It was a good choice for you, but I think it was a good choice for many, many, many other people over the years. It's a good thing you made this.
Then I hope so.
Yes. Jason, you asked about values and in the profession. Personally, I don't think the core values have changed. It was remarkable how many of the sentiments that date back to the Hippocrates era are still valid and meaningful and important for physicians today. So I don't think I would say one of the things that makes the profession enduring and renewed in each generation, the point of continuity, I think, are the continuity of the values of caring, the values of service, the values of loyalty, the values of science, the values of commitment and dedication. These are unchanging in my mind for medicine, and indeed it's the hallmark of what it means to be part of a profession. When it comes to either recognizing that I personally, I wasn't attracted to medicine because of the values. I learned about the values as I was in the process of learning about medicine. But I think the values that have come to be the hallmarks of the field are ones that have durability.
How were you attracted to medicine? Like, how did you become interested in medicine?
Well, it wasn't with such clarity as Andrew described, because
Because I didn't have too many choices.
you had not.
I didn't like
You
engineering.
knew what you did not want
And
to.
my father didn't think that I could be a writer.
So that left.
And I like someone that I encounter often.
That
I wasn't-
could be. I could be like that. You know, I was, when I started, you know, in our system, you start in undergraduate 4 years, and then if you're going on to a profession, you would apply and enter the profession then. So we don't begin from secondary school with a model knowing already you're in a line for medicine. And in my case, in secondary school, I had studied a lot of math and science, particularly chemistry and physics, and every math course I could take. But I actually did not take a biology course in secondary school. So when I started college, I thought really the first thing I should do is to take a course of biology. And I did in my first year of college take a course of biology that was taught by a fantastic lecturer and spellbinding speaker, a man named George Wald, who later received a Nobel Prize for his work on visual receptors. But he was teaching introductory biology, and it was fascinating, and it got me started on a path where I elected to do physiological psychology because I was also very interested in psychology. I thought I would become a neurologist or a neurobiologist for a time, but I was one of those after finally choosing and deciding medicine was the choice. I had no idea exactly what part of medicine, and ended up really, I got engaged in whatever rotation I was doing was the one I thought I would pursue. They were all, had such appeal. But in the end, I actually chose primary care for medicine and public health. And I explain it to myself sometimes that I thought that way I could combine caring for each individual and doing the most I could for health at large. I don't really know if it was more than just an emotional attachment to the individual patients and the idea of doing something that would make a big difference.
Thank you both for sharing your stories. Someone once told me that biology is chemistry and chemistry is physics. I think a physicist told me that. And so your interest in physics and chemistry it leads to biology, makes total sense.
It worked the other way.
It worked the other way there. I want to open the forum to our participants for questions, because I'm sure they have more interesting questions than I have. So if you have a question for Dr. Huang or Dr. Fineberg, please raise your hand. We'll try to get the microphones to you so you could ask your question.
Could I ask Dr. Huang a question?
Oh, please.
Because I'm very curious, as you look back over your career, from an outsider's view, it honestly appears to be one triumph after another of progression, contribution, making a difference. But from your perspective, as you look back, was there ever a time where you either had doubt or questioning of what you had chosen, where you were doing it, whether you had made the right choice, etc.? Thinking back, was there a moment of reflection about making a choice that might or might not have been the right one?
Well, I never really was had been asked that question before. I'm a simple-minded person all my life. And I don't like to try new things. So my early life in Philadelphia as a house staff of Philadelphia Children's, I was astonished that actually a fatal disease could be turned around successfully. So I was fascinated by it. But I had a little doubt about it too. At that time, the president of Taita Hospital was doing sort of a postgraduate training at Children's. He was a pediatrician. And so I saw him in the hallway where we're holding a black umbrella, which is a pretty Taiwanese habit. So I immediately recognized that he was my instructor when I was a student. So I approached him, and from there on, I actually, if we're going to take him to my home, Marion would cook dinner for him, because he was eating Western food that he didn't particularly, right? And I would take him to Washington to look at the cherry blossom. And then on the trip, I will be driving, and he'll be sitting next to me, and I will be talking to him about the suffering of children undergoing chemotherapy. At that time, it was VAMP, V-A-M-P, the 4-drug combination. You probably remember. So we were wondering whether hematology oncology for malignant disease would ever last. It was doubt. Because you were hurting patients. At the time, you were offering a remission. We didn't have the answer. So at that time, I had a little doubt about whether this is the right track to follow. But somehow, I was moved by some of the people who were working with me at Children's. There was one person by the name of Bob Miller, who was from Yale. He was just a tremendous mentor to me. He would wear colorful ties so the kids would want to play with it. And then he would use his stethoscope to share with the children, asking children to listen to him and play with it, and with a little teddy bear attached to the stethoscope. And he would carry a basket full of all kinds of things that would help him start an IV. So he's the kind of guy who would go to the floor and not have to rush back to the station, because everything was in there. And he was so nice to the patient. So I said, okay, I'm going to be one of them. That secured my, initially it was that family doctor that stimulated me to think that way. And it was Bob Miller, who was tremendous fond of children. And he would be starting scalp needle, remember those days. And then he would do bone marrow from tibia. The kids would not cry. Because he would say, if I got this done, you could go home early. And the kids say, okay, I'm going to take it. And so he was really my mentor. We were fellow interns, really. He wasn't even a mentor, but just a senior.
He seemed to have a genius for knowing what children needed.
He did.
Yeah, when I think of pediatricians, I think of bow ties, because they so often didn't want the children grabbing the tie.
So he would stick a teddy bear,
Yes.
small teddy bear, right, on the tie, and the kids would take it out and put it back on.
Yes.
Then he would, at and listen to the heart ticking, and they love that.
Now, in your career, you made a choice at some point of going, if you will, beyond clinical per se to institutional leadership. And I wonder, was that something that you thought was kind of a choice point for you, or how did that enter in your own trajectory, that level of movement from primary clinician to institutional leader?
So early on, as soon as I was appointed clinical physician at Dr. Rundles immediately put me on the formation, the construction of the cancer center building itself, as well as the organization, the operation. Even though I was just a very junior person. And that opportunity gave me a chance to do what I thought was the best thing to do for Duke. And there was approval from everyone else. So I was allowed to do with virtually no resistance at Duke. And so I was simple-minded. I thought that I would be the same in Taiwan when I first studied in 1990. Of course, that was a different story.
But you managed in Taiwan to...
Well, you have to ask the audience whether I managed it okay or not.
I would say this is proof of the concept in the doing and in the building, because there was nothing when you started. So
yeah, it was nothing.
it was nothing.
Not even money.
Well, you put all the pieces together. But it's interesting even in that your most important early mentor, Dr. Rundle, also gave you the opening to develop the managerial, organizational, institutional development
We became
skills.
lifelong friends
Yeah, fascinating.
until his death.
Uh-huh.
And I was lucky to be, I have already studied in Taiwan at that time. So I went back, and then the daughter called me. I was in the clinic seeing patients, and she called me and said that the father was ill and asked me whether I wanted to see him. So I rushed to his, this was right after the clinic, rushed to see him, and he was bedbound. He was sort of dozing away, and then when I appeared, he woke up and called me my name Andrew, and it was fully awake.
It sounds like you were the medicine that day.
Just that day that he passed away the next day.
Okay. But still, it was a valuable meeting, both I'm sure for him and...
It was a very special relationship of a mentor,
Yeah.
a professor,
Yeah.
and a very junior person.
Yeah. I think it's also very revealing, and I feel the same way. My mentors have now passed, but I still carry them with me. Because I think of the lessons that they instilled and the model they represented, and it's a living part of the way I am, because they helped to make me who I am. And maybe there's another generation that is now learning the same lessons from you in the way they choose to act and to teach the next generation and lead it. I think this generation to generation character is also a fundamental part of medicine. Maybe it's broader in life, but in medicine, again, going back to the ancient days, the idea of having an apprentice that you would transmit the art and the secrets at the time of medicine, this is also a really ancient, enduring idea for medicine and healthcare. And maybe we embody it even today.
I have been lucky. Wayne Rundles was certainly a very important person, but I am working with That's the story behind it. The head of the publishing company is a patient of ours. So he would come for care, and then one day he had his blood drawn, so he didn't starve anymore. So he came up and had coffee and breakfast. So he called me from our cafeteria, asked me to join him. So I went down to sit with him. And the first thing he asked me was, I want to publish your memoir. And I said, oh, I have an agreement with my wife. If I ever write a memoir, that she would end with a divorce. She wouldn't like it.
Sounds like a choice, but okay. So I won't probe it why, but okay,
So
She
I
sounds
told
like a
him,
very
and he
wise
said,
person.
oh, no. So he stopped. And a year later, I called him up. I said that my wife said I could write about my mentors, as long as they are my mentors and how I learned from them, which could be read by other people, or if worthwhile, follow. Not about how great I was. So I immediately called the publisher, and I said, I'm given the green light. I can, as long as I write about my mentors, about my learning process, it's successful.
This is a brilliant solution. And, you know, telling the story of your mentors inevitably will tell your story also, because they are the ones who help make you who you are.
Well, no. She is actually editing. So if I talk too much of myself, that will be removed.
I think we have a question from, or maybe more from the audience.
My question goes to Dr. Fineberg. Echoing your questions to Andrew, Dr. Huang, you are the expert of clinical decision making. So one says life and career is the accumulation of our choices. So do you have any tips or strategy to recommend for us when we choose how to do in our professional career when you reflect all your professional career? Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for such a kind question. I always like to think of myself as someone who believed in evidence and thought rationally and tried to use good evidence to make sound decisions. And I recall one day I was driving in a car with several of our students from my class at the time on decision science and health. And one of the students said, excuse me, she said, I would like to know, do you actually use decision analysis in your personal decisions? And I said, absolutely, as long as it feels right. And I think that this is a very important aspect of being comfortable with your own choices. Sometimes in life we have options that are available that we have very limited choice. We don't want to be an engineer, so we choose medicine because it's acceptable. But sometimes you have a lot of choices, and you're faced with many more options. Sometimes it's a big life choice and somebody else is involved, like your spouse. I won't go into the long story, but I once actually, on a personal decision with my wife, worked through an options analysis that involved Duke University, actually. Yes, that's another, I don't know if you ever met Joel Fleischman at Duke. Is it Joel Fleischman?
Joel.
Joel. Yeah, he just passed away, you know, this year. He was
important for
so important for Duke.
sustenance of
Yes, he really embodied the university and was a very dear friend. But I think that the answer I gave that moment in the vehicle was probably the way I think about it even today. All of the things we're talking about are really tools for us to use, take advantage, to learn from. I was so impressed in Rachel's presentation how systematic and effective the lessons that she was outlining in a way that most of us, most of the time, don't think about in such a careful, systematic way. Labeling, as well as living by, as well as teaching, those key concepts, I think, is just so valid and important. So for me, I have been always feeling fortunate that I could rely on that tool. If I think back to when I first was exposed to formal decision science as a student, it was one of those moments when I had this incredible sense of relief, because it seemed to embody the key ideas of options and probabilities and values that I had never articulated but felt very deeply. And so it gave me a language to apply the things that I believed were very important. For me personally, and in the way I have made choices in my own life, that tool has been a very, very precious and cherished companion.
Hi, thank you so much, Dr. Great work. Or I guess for being American, I could say Harvey, but it still makes me very uncomfortable. But that being said, I'm going to ask you a question that I get asked all the time. I usually get asked this because of my gender and because I have, on the surface, seem to have, I get asked this all the time. How do you do it all? And this is kind of, most women, I will say, no, this is an insult, actually, because this is actually implying that you don't, because we all don't do it all, obviously, all of us, no matter what our gender is. But I will say the reason why I get asked this question is because I visibly am female. I visibly am married to a guy who has a career, and I visibly have 2 children. And so I think Dr. Fineberg talked about Jane Weeks earlier today, who's somebody we both know is a late, amazing breast medical oncologist. But she at some point told a mentee of hers who was also female, and said that Jane and her husband, Jane had decided never to have children because she was so devoted to her career that she didn't want to have children. And I'm going to say that, of course, not everyone needs to have children, not everyone needs to be married to a member of the opposite sex for fulfillment. So I'm going to put that out there. But that being said, because I get asked these questions because I phenotypically resemble, I guess, some platonic ideal of what is not ideal, I'm going to ask both of you, because Dr. Huang talked about sponsorship and mentorship, and Dr. Fineberg talked about the apprentice model that we all admire so much, and so much of my success has been being able to, as Dr. Huang alluded to, somebody who doesn't look like me saw enough of me and them, and I was able to convince them that I was enough like them to take me on in that apprentice model. But how do we speak to a younger generation, younger than me now, but the younger generation, how do we speak to, it's not just women, it's everybody. Everybody wants work-life integration now, and even in Taiwan, they want that. So how do we, all of us, how do we speak to a younger generation and inspire them to go into medicine? How do we always put the patient first, as somebody said was the most important thing, when actually sometimes your family, or not even just your family, but who you are outside of work needs to come first too.
You have to start by being lucky Maybe we can also make some of our own luck, but if you're lucky in the support around you and family and friends, if you're lucky in the position you happen to be at the right time, at the right moment, if you're lucky in finding the opportunity at that moment to enter that residency in surgery or to take that position, you know, the biggest change in the complexion of US medical schools during my career, when I was a student, there were 4 women in my class, more than 120. And today, across the board in the US, it's more than half are women. This is the most dramatic change in the makeup of the profession. But when my wife, who also happens to be a physician, was herself applying to medical school, she was told to her face, "Don't you realize you're going to be taking up the place of a man?" in order to discourage her. They didn't know her very well, obviously. So this is a big change. For today, I think whether you're a young man or a young woman, the opportunity is yours to make. And I think each of us has to ask ourselves how we want to live and what we want to accomplish, what gives us satisfaction, what do we feel will be the right thing, and then we just do our best. Sometimes things really work out in the way you want, sometimes they don't. Each of us has experienced disappointments as well as undeserved joys. But over time, I think we're so fortunate, most of us in medicine, that we can work because it's joyful. We can live in order to work and not just take a job in order to live. And this difference for most of us means a life that is meaningful and fulfilling.
As you know, I'm not nearly as wise as Harvey is, but I will try. I think this world actually eventually, according to someone from Cambridge, will be taken over by women. You know, they are so much wiser than the men. I'm sorry, I probably said the wrong thing. But fortunately, the world is at least divided by the other gender. I am what I am because of my spouse. And we didn't argue too much, a little bit sometimes.
Not even about the memoir.
Oh, the memoir was a big thing because she didn't think that I was worth anything. So she didn't want me to say that I was great. I could write how great my mentors are. But you know, she says she followed me to return to Taiwan outside of this comfortable environment in North Carolina, and appreciated that. But everything else I listened, including afternoon walk. We lived close to Da'an Forest Park, and we would come home earlier in order to take a 40-minute to 60-minute every day, and then weekend around National Taiwan University campus for an hour and a half to 2. And that's for my health, because I normally would just sit and read, type away things instead of walking around and seeing the world. I'm in Taiwan Chinese or China, so I like to stay home. And as a kid, I stayed home. I stayed home and read my father's books, and that gave me the education. But physically, I'm rather small and not strong. But with I would have to say that I made my decision not without her. The decision is made by secretly considering her as the real boss. She didn't know. now that I have revealed it, she knows.
Oh, actually, maybe Jennifer, because maybe sometime tomorrow you could inform us how sort of your career has shaped you as a female physician. And for me, I'm very interested in the way I do it. I have a daughter who's interested in medicine, so I just volunteer her to work in this conference so she could hear and meet other female physicians that are interested in a career in medicine. And you know, I like my career, and I told her you might like it too, so you could taste it and see if you like it. And so it's a very difficult question, and lots of choice decisions to make along the way. I know we're running out of time, and for this session, and we have a concluding session with Dr. Huang. If you want to say a few words. Yes, of course. Yes.
It's very surprising. Harvey, can you stay and correct me if I make mistakes? Somehow, with all the speakers in the keynote, we came to the same conclusion. We don't have an argument. We think humanity is important, and it should be the guiding principle for our profession. Because we are dealing with people's lives. So you can't say, well, I'm going to use AI, and AI, whatever AI tells me, I will follow. Or genomics, which we didn't cover today. We will one of these days. The genomics will tell you too what drug to use. But of course, you know, you use it and you have to watch carefully to see whether it is doing the right thing or it is not. And it also could create tremendous complications. And then recently we lost some patients to renal failure, acute renal failure, due to the use of immune checkpoint inhibitors. So we have to be very careful. And I think it's good that we didn't include genomics today or tomorrow, but we will eventually. And I actually like the person who wrote this book called Odyssey, Genomics. Odyssey, yeah, Genomics Odyssey. It's a great book. Yeah, and he's now the head of medicine. Yeah, he's good. And we should include him the next time. Stay tuned. We will invite him over. I would say that humanity stands as the guiding post for all of us, all the speakers. But at the same time, we are asked to be always curious, always be interested, always initiate new ideas, always look at science as something that's going to help us reach our goal. And I think I'm oversimplifying it. Somehow we all wrote our text at home without any previous discussion on it. But we came out thinking almost identically the same way. And I would say perhaps this strengthens this meeting for the audiences, that we seriously have no doubts that we should develop our future rigorous science preserve mankind, not the other way around. And I think that would be the end point of my discussion for today. Would that be acceptable, Harvey?